Throughout history, there have been countless unexplainable stories, events, and moments captured on audio. These horrifying tapes were archived, never to be heard again. Until now. These are the tapes of trepidation. Tape number 32. Afraid of the dark.
When I woke up, I only recognized the growing sense of thirst from within my dehydrated body. I licked my parched lips and slipped out of the covers, my body suddenly hit by the cold air stitched into the seams of the oppressive darkness ahead. I quivered as I reluctantly embraced the chill temperature and made my way to the door, jumping with each step as small creaks were produced from the weight of my foot being placed upon the oak floorboards. Although the noise was faint, it sounded deafeningly loud in contrast to the dead silence surrounding my petite self. All 5 of my fingers curled around the bronze-colored doorknob ahead, and they steadily turned it until a small click was heard. I then placed my tiny hand against the wooden door, coated in a fine layer of white paint, and with a gentle push, the barrier between the safe haven of a child's bedroom and whatever lay beyond was removed. I shivered as a new draft of icy air entered the room. A brand new wave of darkness seemed to rush through the doorway and engulf the area, its color resembling that of tar. Summoning all the courage I could, I placed both feet firmly on the beige carpet that embellished the ground. My eyes glared at the corridor before me. It appeared lengthier at night than during the day. I could imagine elongated arms melting from the walls on both sides, grasping at my clothing. I could envision dozens of spiders dropping from the ceiling, several landing on my hair and others crawling on the surface of my body. Shaking my head, I banished such thoughts and proceeded down the hallway. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I walked past the room where my parents soundly rested in their comfortable bed. There was no turning back, and even if I wanted to, my craving for a drink to sate my ever-growing dehydration only grew. I carried on still, finally reaching the end of the endless path and found myself in a clearing. By then, my eyes had grown somewhat accustomed to the dark, and I could make out a few pieces of furniture and a television set. I slowed my pace and gulped nervously. A sense of peril entrenched the room. I found that shadows would dance in the corner of my eyes, only to disappear once I turned my head in their direction. The darkness seemed even more foreboding than it had just seconds earlier. I desperately wished to run to my parents like I had so many times before. Still, I remembered how they always told me there was nothing to be afraid of. They explained numerous times that my young imagination would always come up with ways to scare me, but I had to learn to be brave and overcome the fear I would often encounter at the hands of my own mind. Thus, my mind was set on proving to my mother and father that I wasn't afraid anymore, and so I carried on. I confidently walked forward, repeating what my parents had said in my thoughts with each stride. After taking a few steps, I heard it. From behind me, I could make out the sound of footsteps, their rhythm conflicting with my own. As I stopped, so did they. My heart began beating faster than before. Had it been my mind playing tricks on me again? I resumed my steady pace, and this time, the only footsteps I could hear were my own. As I neared the kitchen, I found myself standing completely still once more. Figures and shapes, yet again, found themselves located in the corners of my eyes. I attempted to take a few deep breaths in order to calm down. It was just my imagination, right? I tried my hardest to assure myself of that, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I doubted it. And that growing sense of fear showed as I walked even faster. I kept my eyes focused ahead, not daring to look behind me for even a second. The offbeat footsteps returned once again, and I responded by going even faster. I felt the wind start to pick up and brush by my face as I realized how quickly I was moving. I was certain that my imagination was causing me to hear the footsteps on my trail and the forms appearing in the corners of my eyes. I was aware that my imagination was the reason behind my deepest, darkest fears, which were beginning to make their presence known within my soul. I knew for a fact that only my imagination could make my heart beat the way it did and soak my palms in a thin layer of sweat. My parents would never lie to me, would they? Regardless of what I knew to be true or not, I was close to arriving at my destination. I began a full sprint as I felt the darkness clutching my ankles and arms. I could hear the footsteps aimlessly walking around, and more illusions of figures accompanied them. I had one hell of an imagination, and I had one thought racing through my mind. I needed to find a light switch. I was desperate for light that would illuminate my surroundings, diving back to the treacherous night and whatever creatures lived within it, their sole purpose in life to capture me and munch on my bones. I was so close, just a few feet away. I leaped forward and pushed a small lever upwards, soaking me and the area in a warm, much appreciated glow. I sighed deeply, relieved to be out of danger at last. However, before I could even move, my heart stopped and my eyes widened. Behind me, I heard a voice most unfamiliar. It was guttural and moist, and it echoed throughout the entire house.
Finally, I can see you.
I flicked off the lights before letting out a shrill cry. I dashed through the darkness, through the living room, the hallway, and to my parents' room. Though I can't be certain, I swear I could hear the faint sound of childish giggling from behind me. My parents were frustrated that I had awoken them, but I didn't care in the slightest. I clung to my mother, sobbing into her chest. My father didn't find anything in the house. He searched every nook and cranny of the place, only to confirm his suspicions that we were the sole occupants. My parents let me sleep with them that night. I knew that no matter what I said, they would simply chalk my experience up to being the consequence of a hyperactive mind. But I knew there was something with me. I knew beyond any doubt that the breathing I felt on the back of my neck and that deep, perverted voice was all real. Looking back, I feel almost silly that I was afraid of the dark. We were never afraid of the dark. Rather, it was what was in it that petrified us to our very core. It was the knowledge that the only thing separating us from a potentially cruel, twisted fate was the thin veil of darkness surrounding us.
This has been tape number 32, Afraid of the Dark, by the Tapes of Trepidation Horror Narration Podcast. Afraid of the Dark was written by Icydice and was originally posted on the Creepypasta Wiki. Guest narration for this episode was provided by the very talented Madam Strangeways. If you enjoy your horror based in reality, check out her podcast, Madam Strangeways, which you can find on all of your favorite podcast servers, as well as on YouTube. And be sure to follow her on social media. You'll find a link tree in the show notes. Production and sound design for this episode was by TJ Hodder. Music for this episode was provided by CO.AG. The Tapes of Trepidation theme was written by the incredible J.M. Scherf. All logos, banners, overlays, and graphic design work was provided by the talented Jason Reese from Jaybird Digital Arts. If you have a story you would like to submit, or a question regarding the show, please contact us at tapesoftrepidation@gmail.com. Support the show by subscribing and leaving a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, your favorite podcatcher, or leave us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to tell your friends. Word of mouth is extremely helpful to a new podcast like this one. Check us out on social media through the link tree in the show notes. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Be sure to come join us on Discord if you do have a Discord account. We have a lot of fun over there. And if you'd like to support the show a little more, consider joining the Tapes of Trepidation Patreon, where for as little as $5 a month, you can gain access to monthly bonus short story narrations, the weekly behind-the-scenes podcast within the archive, and more. Come, join us, and become trapped within the archive. Just like my current patrons, Kelly Sisson, Neil Skarupa of Neurotic Voice, Doozer Pindan, Ronan Komori, Eric Phones, and Patrick Stewart. Thank you all so much for the support. All content used on Tapes of Trepidation is either original, used with permission, or is available under Creative Commons Share-alike license. All rights reserved, unless otherwise stated. This podcast and its content may not be redistributed or rebroadcasted without the express written consent of Tapes of Trepidation and the story's author. Thank you so much for listening.